Can you hear me?
There we go. Okay.
Hey everybody, Ways and Means Committee reconvening here for the budget hearing on the Comptroller's office, which is found in volume 1 of the budget book, beginning on page 23. I'm Ryan Dorsey, filling in for Chairman Costello, who is doing the huge lift this week of being here for almost all these hearings and in the room. Thank you so much, Chairman Costello. We have here right now members of the committee, Councilman Christopher Burnett, Councilman Robert Stokes, Vice President Sharon Middleton, Councilman Yitzi Schleifer, as well as members of the council, Odette Ramos here in the chambers, Mark Conway, Felicia Porter, and we are here. We have Matt Stegman from the council president's office here online with us. Let's see, we have Natasha Mayhew from Mayor Scott's office. And in chambers here right now representing BBMR, Aaron Moore, and we are here for the Comptroller's office with Comptroller Bill Henry. Take it away, Mr. Comptroller.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I want to begin by thanking Councilman Conway for the temporary loan of his desk. I want to also thank the other council members who are attending. My name is Bill Henry. I am the Comptroller of Baltimore City. I am joined here in chambers by Casey Kelleher, our Director of Communications. Also available online are Erica McClammy, the Deputy Comptroller, and Celeste Amato, our Chief of Staff. We are also joined online by agency heads, Andy Frank, the Office of Real Estate, Josh Pash, the City Auditor. Looking for Simon Etta. I don't see Simon Etta or Charmaine Callahan logged in. Simon is the Director of Telecommunications, and Charmaine is the head of the Municipal Post Office. As you know, the Comptroller provides oversight for these 4 agencies. The office is also responsible for the administrative functions and operations of the city's Board of Estimates. When I ran for this office, one of my main priorities was to modernize it, to bring it fully into the 21st century, both by updating its processes and using technology to make the city's spending more open and more transparent. Our office was happy to help the mayor's office develop its open checkbook dashboard, and it is our intention in FY23 to make similar advances in displaying and disclosing Board of Estimates information to the public. Again, as you know, I started this position not quite 6 months ago, so some of what I will be presenting today reflects the changes that we were able to make in both current operations and what we're budgeting for the next year. But for the most part, this is a status quo budget, largely reflecting the interactions of HR, BBMR, and the previous administration. I will also note up front, as I was sharing with the Vice Chair earlier, the Comptroller's office, once you discount the accounting change BBMR required for the Municipal Post Office, shows only a 2.2% increase over FY21, which is less than half of the 5.3% increase in overall city spending. So let us go straight to, oh, I'm sorry. I had meant to be sharing my screen all along. There we go. So this, in the beginning. All right. So what we have here is the first service for the Comptroller's office is executive direction and control. That is essentially the office of my senior staff. and also the staff who take care of the functions, the administrative functions and operations of the Board of Estimates. We also handle the communications and personnel functions for not just ourselves, but for all 4 of the departments under our supervision. I'm not gonna, do you want me to read the individual major budget items, or are we just gonna go through and then I'll take questions at the end? Okay. Okay, so the 2 major budget items for the executive direction service, we moved a position, a vacant deputy city auditor position from audits over to executive direction to create the chief of staff position. Previously, the office had a deputy comptroller who effectively served as both deputy comptroller and chief of staff, and both ran the office and supervised the 4 agencies. One of the things that I wanted to do from the beginning of transition was to reorganize the department by separating out those functions and having somebody who could give full attention to each. And we did not need to create that new position because there was a vacant deputy city auditor position that we were able to just move over to executive direction and control. The other major budget item I already talked about, which is if you look at our budget just from the top lines, it looks like there's a $3.3 million increase. But what that $3.3 million increase actually is in the past, the way that we budgeted for postage is budget would give agencies money for postage in their budget. And then when an agency had a mailing that it was having the municipal post office send out, the municipal post office would bill the agency for the postage, transfer the money over to its own account, and then buy the postage for the mailing. And apparently it's a best accounting practice to actually reflect that postage in the agency spending the money, as well as in the agencies that are doing the mailing. So Aaron can do this probably a little bit better than I can, but for all intents and purposes, the $3.3 million that looks like it's been added to the municipal post offices and hence the controller's office budget is not actually new money that we can do anything in particular with. It's just reflecting current services. Okay, so next slide. The Audits Department is the city's independent auditor dedicated to improving government accountability. Most of what the Department of Audits does is conduct the biennial performance and financial audits, but they also handle the CAFR and single audit, working with the Department of Finance. And there are also some audits of individual agencies, for example, the Enoch Pratt Free Library, that the state requires by law that they do every year. The current budget takes about $500,000 that had been sitting in the Department of Audit's account, budgeted originally to support biennial financial and performance audits. And we're going to actually take that money and create 2 new auditor manager positions and use some of the remaining to contract with a technology auditing firm, because we're not quite at the point where we think we need an in-house IT auditor, but that may change in future years. And then it also transfers the vacant deputy city auditor position over to executive direction and control. On the next slide, you can see the calendar year 2021 biennial performance audit plan. This has already been shared with the Biennial Audit Oversight Commission, but we wanted to make sure that the whole council got a chance to see this. The department is already well along with some of the early ones. In fact, they should be releasing the audits for fire department and UGS sometime next month. and the CAFR and single audit will actually be released to the Board of Estimates next week. Next, we have real estate acquisition. I'm sorry. Oh, the CAFR, the Consolidated Annual Financial Report, and the single audit. Real estate acquisition, Department of Real Estate manages the city's real estate assets. The real estate prepares the leases for any city-owned property, whether those are internal leases with city agencies, or in those cases where either a city agency is leasing privately owned space, or if a private party is leasing city space. We also maintain a repository of unsaled tax certificates. There is a misconception out there that the Office of Real Estate plays some guiding role in tax sale, which I can say sadly is not true. I think it comes from the fact that the only significant mention of tax sale in the city code does speak very specifically to the duties and responsibilities of the Office of Real Estate. But what is less clear is that that only refers to the tax sale certificates which did not sell at tax sale. So basically, after tax sale, if there's still tax sale certificates left over that didn't sell, they come to the Office of Real Estate and we hold on to them until somebody in the future does show an interest in buying that particular tax sale certificate. The major budget item here is we did not learn until far too late in the budget process that last year, during the transition, but before I took office, the previous administration had worked out an arrangement to abolish a position and use that money to upgrade another position. And so we are still trying to figure out how we're going to deal with that in the next budget, because the Office of Real Estate is already kind of understaffed, and now we have even fewer positions that we can try to spread that work across. Moving on to the Department of Telecommunications. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. This was formerly the Municipal Telephone Exchange, and one of the things that we had asked for this year is to change its name to the Department of Telecommunications, because Municipal Telephone Exchange kind of gives an image of people sitting in front of a actual switchboard plugging cables into poles, and that's not true. Although I will tell you that if anybody has an interest in visiting the offices of the Department of Telecommunications, they do have an antique switchboard that they have maintained, which is museum quality. And we're looking forward to finding an opportunity to showcase that, to show the evolution of the Department of Telecommunications over the years. We've literally moved from an office that has little cables and plugs that go into holes in a cabinet to now doing voice over internet protocol to provide the majority of the landline service here in Baltimore City. We also do continue to operate a small amount of the legacy centric system, but most of the landline service is now handled by VoIP. We also supply cell phones to all city workers, and we provide the equipment and technical support for all of the different city call centers, even though the only one that telecommunications actually manages is what's still called the City Hall switchboard, even though it's not in City Hall and it doesn't use a switchboard. But despite it being poorly named, it still gets 14,000 calls every month for people who don't know how to reach the person they're trying to reach, or in some cases, don't know if they should be using 311 or some other city access line. The major budget items for telecommunications we're continuing to pay off the debt for financing the transition to the citywide VoIP system. And we have been saving money for the city by using that system. And that savings is going to be used to reduce the user fee that agencies pay. So even for city council people, you'll notice a difference in hopefully your telecommunications budget for how much you had to pay last year versus how much you're going to be paying in the coming year. Right. And then the municipal post office. I talked about this in the opening. The municipal post office is literally the city's mail house. For anyone who hasn't had a chance to come and visit, it's in the basement of the Mitchell Courthouse, right under the print shop. It's a mail house. They sort and they send out hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail, and from water bills, parking tickets, tax bills, and save the city money by doing so, because we're able to take advantage of the reduced postage that the U.S. Postal Service offers if you're willing to do things like pre-sort your mail in advance. And then finally, I talked a little bit about modernization at the beginning. The digitizing of the Board of Estimates process that we would like to do will be incredibly helpful, both in terms of reducing the internal needs for agencies as they're making requests of the Board of Estimates. But its biggest advantage will be in making the entire process more open and transparent. By digitizing the information, we will be able to store it in a database and have an outward-facing portal that will allow anyone to search the database for information regarding Board of Estimates decisions and expenses. And that's something that the City Council honestly knows better than the Board of Estimates, in that Legistar has been up and running for, I want to say, something in the range of 15 or so years, and has been moderately successful at even going back and digitizing some records from before it even started. So you can look up things as old as 20 years old on Legistar. Right now, you can't do any of that with Board of Estimates. The closest thing we have is we have agendas online. And if you know the date of a particular agenda that you're looking at, you can go back and find that agenda, but that still won't get you the backup documentation for any of the issues that were being addressed by the board. And there's no way right now to search, because everything is only indexed by the date of the Board of Estimates action. That modernization, I think, is very important. There was no money in the operating budget this coming year for doing that, but we're planning on putting in a proposal for American Rescue Plan funding to cover the cost of the digitization, both of that process and starting to put back records into digital form so that they can be more easily accessed. When City Hall is a little bit more open and people are here more often, anyone is welcome to come visit the Comptroller's office, and I will show you the 2 offices that we have right now that are largely full of file cabinets with paper records, some of them going back decades. I mean, I can see for sentimental reasons why it might be nice to be able to open up a file folder and see a project that you worked on back when you were younger, but or a well-bound leather book containing the information. But we really look forward to working with the document management service to get all of this paper scanned in and have it stored in a fashion where it is accessible and transparent to the people. The second proposal I wanted to spotlight today, and I'm sorry I didn't see if Councilman Torrance was online right now, but he and I had a conversation about the fact that the Office of Real Estate, like several other city agencies, is formally responsible for some city property in terms of its maintenance. And as is often the case with city agencies, the amount of money that is budgeted each year for us to maintain the properties that we're responsible for is nowhere near the amount of money needed to actually maintain all of the properties that we're responsible for. So another proposal we're looking to put in is to basically do a whole lot of deferred maintenance and try to wipe out as much as we can of the backlog of requests. Some of them are pretty straightforward, like communities that have vacant lots in their neighborhood, and on that vacant lot, there are one or more dead trees that are constantly dropping branches on people's cars, or kids are afraid to parents are afraid to let their kids play on a vacant lot because of the dead trees, but removing them costs thousands of dollars. So, removing dead trees from vacant lots. Another one is we have one particular case we know of a piece of property in Hanlon Park that has a retaining wall that has essentially outlived its useful lifespan and now needs to be replaced. And that's going to be an extremely expensive proposition, which is why it hasn't happened for the years that the community association has been complaining about it. But we're going to ask for a big chunk of funds that we can do all of this work now and try to catch up on that deferred maintenance. And if it does not get approved for American Rescue Plan funding, we will be back before the City Council next year asking for it to be included in the capital plan. And with that, I think that's the end of my presentation. Yes, so I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Can you pull down the your presentation? Awesome. First, I'm going to channel Chairman Costello here and ask you, sorry, before I do that, I'm going to go to Council President Mosby. Did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? Yes, sir. Sorry, I had to turn my TV down. I was listening. I listened to it on television. Real quick, Mr. Comptroller. From a mail perspective, I know that there's a constant issue with the city, like sending reoccurring bills for decades to like folks who no longer live in properties, to properties that are no longer in existence, that are vacant. And I think that there's a tremendous amount of potential money we could save there. Clearly, we don't have a system in place, but I'm going to ask you if you could look into like seeing if there's a system out there for us to better vet through the places where we're sending mail to. Particularly if we've sent 100 pieces of mail to the same person at the same address without any response, the likelihood for us to send 100 more probably significantly is just not there, and it's kind of a waste of money and a drain on whatever postal budget that you kind of operate or have. So I don't know. I look forward to kind of working and partnering with you. I bought a house, and I've been dealing with this since I was on the council. I bought a house that was abandoned for almost 20 years in West Baltimore. It's a house we still live in today, and the original owner, it was abandoned for 20 years. The original owner owned several other properties throughout the city. He still receives mail to my house. Now, we've sent it back hundreds of times, but we still get that reoccurring mail. So I don't know what system that we can help you develop, if there's some technology out there But definitely willing to try to partner with you because I think there could be some savings. I don't think I'm the only address around the city that kind of goes through this issue. So I don't know if there's anything you can expound on that, or again, anything that we can help out from a council perspective, but something I'm definitely want to work with you on and the administration on to get us in new age. And then, clearly the direction is trying to go paperless, right? So outside of like, for the folks who still want the mail, but then like the next step of really trying to do a true paperless system in the city of Baltimore, definitely something, again, I'm willing to work with you and would like to work with you.
Well, first of all, thank you for that, Mr. President. I would be happy.
Now you're on mute, Mr. Comptroller.
Oh. Mine doesn't say I'm on mute.
I can hear him.
No, I got you. It was on me.
Okay.
Listen, I had that sound turned up.
You got me though. You got me though. All right. So okay. All right. That's okay. That's it. No more. I'm not showing you boxing tips anymore. Okay. So here's what I think we could do. Technically, the municipal post office, as it's set up right now, doesn't have any content control over the addressing because we're just mailing the pieces that DPW or collections or whoever, they send us the pieces already addressed. But what I will acknowledge is that it probably makes sense for the municipal post office to be the point of quality control if people send back mail that was improperly addressed or incorrectly delivered. It's going to be the municipal post office that gets that feedback, that gets that input. And it probably makes more sense to have somebody at the municipal post office keeping track of that and working with the individual agencies to get those names and addresses deleted from individual address lists. It probably makes more sense to have a person there than to have a different person in each one of those agencies trying to do that work. So yeah, I think that's a great point, and we will be happy to work with your office and with HR and VBMR to see how we could work that service into the operations of the municipal post office.
There are a couple of things I can add to that. This is Erica McClammy.
Okay.
Our director for MPO is not able to be with us today. However, I do understand from our mailing operations, we do have software we use that is connected to the post office. We have our list of addresses that the post office uses, and that software is updated on a daily basis. When the post office is alerted or is aware of change of addresses, incorrect addresses, or bad addresses, that information is input into the software. Every piece of mail has a barcode. And so all of our mail that goes out is barcoded, and our machines, our sorting machines, et cetera, pull or flag mail whose barcode has been flagged or tagged by the post office as incorrect, no address, et cetera. And of course, that only happens if that information comes back to the post office. The other scenario is what the controller also mentioned, as well as the council president. If mail comes to a house and the bad mail comes back to the city, to the post office, and returned to center, et cetera, we can provide that information to the post office, and we can provide that information to the agency that may have mailed out that mail.
Yes, because DHCD has been sending mail again. I've been in house since 04. It was abandoned for 20 years before I brought it. And Mr. Gaston has been dead for a very long time, yet I still receive a tremendous amount of mail from the city in his name. And again, I've constantly sent it back, but we still get it. So Ms. McClamey, offline, I'm going to send you my address to see if maybe you can look up through one of those systems, because I'm wondering if this is, I feel like the problem is probably not just unique to my residency, but to similar residencies that addresses that are out there. Thank you. Mr. Chair, that's all I had for the comptroller. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. President, thank you. So I'm going to do my best to channel Chairman Costello here for a moment again, as I did with the last one, this with a different question. Mr. Comptroller, what do DOT, DPW, DGS, city schools,
Rec and Park.
rec and parks, HABC and DHCD have in common?
Mr. Comptroller?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm happy to feed this one to one of my staff who apparently already knows the answer.
What is lawn mowing?
That is
For
correct.
500.
That is correct. Lawn mowing for 500. Based on, so first of all, I have had several questions for different agencies about their ARP requests. And it was really nice to see a slide in your presentation on requests that the Comptroller's office intends to make. There was, I don't recall seeing that in any other offices or agencies' presentations, so that's really nice to see. Based on your second one, it sounds like the Comptroller's office is an 8th to add to this list of 7. The Comptroller's office has to maintain properties, including things as routine as mowing.
Yes, although I don't know how much of that we end up actually doing. Andy, do you have any specifics that you can share for this?
Well, we know that we have about 1,300 properties in our portfolio. These are lots that were acquired through tax sale in the 80s and 90s. What we don't know is how many are wooded lots and how many are grassy parcels. But we know it's a lot. And on the point of the ARP funds, that would be one of the things that we would want to worry of all of our lots to determine what categories they fall into. We know that last year we received about $85,000 worth of requests for tree pruning and dead tree removal and mowing, and we have about $30,000 in the budget. So we have to work with our partners in Rec and Parks and Solid Waste to maintain these lots.
Thanks, Andy. I'm going to go to Chairman Costello, who has joined us here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Mr. Comptroller, thank you for being with us. I see you selected your previous seat to sit in today. Do we have Josh Pash with us today?
He is here, sir.
Josh, I just want to take a moment to thank you publicly for your work as a city auditor, to thank your team and really acknowledge that you've been a real partner to the Biennial Audits Oversight Commission, which I chair. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you. Really enjoy our work together, and looking forward to many more years of that. I just wanted to get that comment out of the way. I'm gonna pass it back to the chairman. I might come back with some more detailed questions for you in a little bit, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one other quick general question, then I'm going to go to committee members and then other members of the council. There are no performance metrics in here for the Comptroller's office. Can you speak to that, Mr. Comptroller, or Aaron, or what's up?
I'm happy to. We asked about that, and we were told by BBMR that historically that there had not been performance metrics for the agencies under the Comptroller's office, and the comparison was made to in the same way that there aren't performance metrics for other elected officials. So there's not performance metrics for the city council, or there's not performance metrics for the mayoral team. You know, although there are performance metrics for agencies, and that's how we were looking at it, is that maybe it would be hard to do performance metrics for the Comptroller's office per se, but it shouldn't be hard to come up with performance metrics for the Department of Telecommunications or for the Municipal Post Office. And in fact, those agencies do keep their own internal metrics. I was going to share, I'm sorry, I forgot to share this during the presentation, but telecommunications performs continuous physical audits of telecommunications facilities so that they can disconnect unused lines and circuits. Right now, the Department of Telecommunications is in the middle of auditing the phone usage of the police department. And they have a projected cost avoidance of possibly as much as $20,000 a month if they can identify lines that the police department has assigned to them and that we're paying for, but which aren't actually being used. So we are already committed to working with BDMR. I think they're happy to. I think they were just doing what had always, in this case, not been done in the past. But we embrace the idea of being more data driven, and we're happy to work with BDMR to come up with performance metrics that can be in next year's budget for each of the agencies. And as somebody who's been to one or two of these budget hearings over the years, I would say if council members have specific suggestions on metrics for any of the 4 agencies that the Comptroller supervises, please feel free to reach out to me or to Erica or Celeste and submit those suggestions as we work through with BDMR what those performance metrics should be. I will point out that already taking a page from comments by the City Council historically, one of the things that we will be doing is we will be making sure that the Audits Department is part of the conversation so that we make sure we're picking metrics that can be audited. Because sometimes when the Department of Audits goes to audit an agency, they'll find that the performance metrics identified in the budget book aren't really very easy to audit. And so we're going to make sure that we don't create that confusion ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to go first to committee members who I see with their hands raised in here. First, I'd like to acknowledge Councilman Glover, who has joined us online. I'm going to go to Councilman Burnett.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Mr. Comptroller. Welcome back to you. Chambers. I hope you kept your seat warm. Are you actually sitting in your seat? Is that the same seat?
I am actually sitting in my old seat, and as I told the vice chair almost exactly 6 months ago, I am literally 2 floors up from where I sit every day. Actually, technically, the vice chair is sitting 2 floors up from where I sit every day.
Got it. So this is more of a, I guess, a seconding of what Chairman Dorsey already brought up around the lot maintenance. And so you answered my question about the cost. So I guess it's something that we just really need to dig into a little bit more. I think in the last fiscal year, my district accounted for a significant portion of that, 80,000 in requests. That's from last year or this year, because we had a tremendous amount of downed trees that were impacting power lines. I mean, it became literally a public safety hazard for a few of my neighborhoods, and those were comptroller lots and required a tremendous amount of coordination. And so really just wanted to second the need for one, just an increased capacity if we aren't going to go to a single agency model, But if we are going to keep it at, each agency is responsible, there really does need to be more resources allocated to be able to do that. And I'm very much interested in the assessment that the office does to look at what the actual true cost of maintaining the 1,300 or so parcels that the Comptroller's office has, and looking forward to a similar analysis from each agency, because as you know very well, this is a concern that people will have, especially this time of year, as I've deemed high grass and weed season, where we are getting a lot of calls from folks and trying to help navigate which agency is responsible. And I didn't know up until a few years ago that the Comptroller had lots, but it was when trees started falling down onto the back of people's yards and cars and whatnot, it became a thing. So just seconding that for this round, Mr. Chair. I may have another on the future, but you guys got to jump on me on this one.
Thank you, and like I said, we're looking forward to for the first time in, I can't even imagine how long, trying to get ahead of the game and making sure that we are taking care of all these properties to the level that the people who live in these neighborhoods want to see them taken care of. It's bad enough when a neighborhood has to deal with blight, but it's especially embarrassing when the blight is government-owned property.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a quick follow-up question. It's just, Mr. Comptroller, if I look on Code Map, am I going to see those properties listed as under Comptroller, or are those the ones that I see that say tax sales, and like under the responsibility of tax sales? How are they going to show up there? Or do you have a list of, do you have a map and a list of the properties that are under your control?
I'm going to probably turn this over to Andy, because I think they're listed as real estate, but Andy, am I wrong?
Oh, office of real estate. Okay.
Actually, Mr. Chair, Mr. Comptroller, they are listed as tax sales, and they reflect the fact that the city purchased them through tax sale many, many years ago. So if you go into Code Map and see a property that is assigned to tax sales as a responsible agency, that would be the real estate office. And we do have a list of the 1,300 parcels which we can make available, and we're actually just beginning the process of mapping them and making them available through mapping to the public.
Yeah, we'd like to request that as just a formal budget request here, I think. Thank you.
Happy to provide that. And I saw one of the early draft copies of the map, and I think you're gonna, some people will be surprised by the breadth of the properties that are in the situation.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, the 1,300 are properties that were taken in tax sale and are still just sitting there in the auspice of the Comptroller's real estate division, right? Is that the right way to say that, Mr. Comptroller?
I think that's most of them. I don't know if that's all of them.
Okay, but there will also be different than all the properties that HCD has that are Baltimore, that are mayor city council properties. Is that a difference?
Yes, that's because those aren't showing up. I believe these are showing up as tax sales.
Right. Every property, well, with some exceptions, every property in the city of Baltimore has a responsible agency tied to it, and tax sales is real estate. There are about 7,000 parcels that are assigned to the housing department. Of that, 2,600 or so are buildings, and the balance are lots. So there's about 7,000 lots and buildings that are assigned to the housing department.
And 7,000 plus the 1,300 that you guys have control of.
Exactly.
Yeah. Got it. The only other thing is, Mr. Comptroller, when you guys provide the list, is there any way, Andy, you guys to provide like a heat map or a geographical map of and plotting them out for us?
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. President, I believe they said that that such a map is already just kind of in the works. It's not complete, but it's in the works, it sounds like.
Got it.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will go to Councilman Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. This is for Controller Henry. Controller, we know that there are a lot of city-owned properties under the Controller's office also, and housing and surplus properties. I have two CDCs, which are Black community CDCs, Black CDCs, and we know about initial racism in the Black community. Will you be working with those two CDCs to do a LDA with those two CDCs to make sure that their surplus property fall under them because they already have developers, so we don't create this initial racism in the Black community? And I know there are mayor and city council owned property and some surplus property. I would like for your office to work with those two CDCs to make sure they do a LDA to make sure they have developers. So when they have the LDA, they have the developers to move forward, so we can make sure those people that still live in the Black community have access to home ownership. We know that it's been intentional and is all over the city, especially in my district. So I'm just trying to see will your office work closely with them and sit down with them to make sure those city-owned properties in their catchment area and surplus property fall under the LDAs.
Well, Councilman, I'll be happy to commit to working with anybody who is interested in taking over or dealing with surplus property. I'm not sure that I'm prepared to commit to providing them with an LDA in advance of seeing how those negotiations go, but I'm happy to sit down and talk with them.
Well, we can, when you sit down and talk with them, that's going to be the.
I don't even know which properties we're talking about.
Okay, well, that's why you have Andy Frank there, right? Yeah. So we would get Andy Frank the list of city-owned properties that's in those CDC area, and sit down with you. They have agreement to create that LDA. That's all I'm asking.
So here's what we have been talking about is I do think that there is more that the city can be doing to be more coordinated and more intentional in how it works with community-based organizations to deal with its surplus property. There are a number of surplus properties that the city owns that, very frankly, very candidly, there isn't any interest from the private sector or the private market for purchasing these properties and developing them in a private sector fashion. And so what I think we should be looking at is we should be coming up with I don't know if you want to call it a program or a process, but some organized, structured, objective way that is equitable, in which the city allocates property that it has and it's going to have to continue to maintain and take care of. We should be allocating that property across the community of community-based organizations that we have here in Baltimore that need space for their operations. If I'm just going to use as an example, rather than having this, nonprofit or that nonprofit be, fortunate for its, for its connections that it is able to get a given surplus school. Let's sit down and look at the surplus schools we have that can't be resold for private reuse and put back on the tax rolls. If they're not going to get put back on the tax rolls, and the city is going to end up taking care of them because they're all in neighborhoods where the neighbors want that building and its grounds well kept. If we're going to take care of it, then we might as well take organizations that need space and put them in and let them use that space for their operations. there are dozens of nonprofits that need space and can't necessarily afford to pay market rate rent wherever they're trying to be. So I think that that's how the city should be prioritizing that use. And I think it's not a little thing. I think it means it's going to be work for us to go out and do a real survey and assessment of all of our vacant city-owned property, determine what is usable, what isn't usable, and for the ones that, where if it is usable, can it be sold and put back on the tax rolls? If not, then what is the best way to use it? And we've had conversations already with the administration, and we're going to be working with other city agencies to look at how the city deals with its real estate. And I think we're going to find some good answers in the next 6 or so months.
Well, Mr. Controller,
in the short term, if you're looking for a commitment to have a conversation, I'm happy to make that commitment. We would be happy to sit down and talk to any CDC that's interested in.
Well,
yeah.
Mr. Controller, I'm not talking about no community association because they don't have a CDC. I'm talking about a CDC and LDA. They do it in Johnson Square. Y'all see what happened over at EDBI. They moved all black folks out because of that process. There was no community associations that had a CDC. So my question again is, I can identify the CDC can identify the city-owned properties, but create an LDA because they already have developers there to do the work to make sure that the people live there become homeowners, or the people that live there can buy the house they're in. The process you're talking about is old. It's been done before. That's why some of the black neighborhoods don't look the same, because we give city-owned property to speculators, to developers, because the LDA is not there in place to make sure they have that they can have that property. Once they have that property LDA in place, they gonna get their own developers, and they can develop their own property. They can sell those homes to the residents there, because I'm talking about wealth. I ain't talking about no community center and all that kind of stuff. I ain't talking about none of that. I'm talking about home ownership, which creates wealth. My question back to you, I have 2 CDCs in my district. We will have them identify city-owned properties. They already have developers that's ready to develop property in their catchment area. Will you commit to sitting down with them and create the LDA in those neighborhoods that intentionally the racism was there? Because I'm gonna use EDBI again. Everybody on this call know what they did. So I'm just trying to ask, can we let me finish, sir. I'm just trying to get a commitment from you to sit down with them and create the LDA. That's all I'm asking.
Councilman Stokes, I think I heard the controller say that he's committed to having a conversation, but
let me finish. I'm not talking about
Councilman
I'm
Stokes.
talking about the LDA.
Councilman Stokes,
sir.
I'm sitting in the chair seat right now. Can you just give me 1 second here, please? I heard the controller say that he's committed to having that conversation, but that he can't at this moment explicitly commit to giving any entity under any circumstance an LDA. But I heard him very clearly say that he's committed to having that conversation. Am I correct about that, Mr. Controller? Is that a satisfactory answer for you right now, Councilman Stokes? And can I ask him to follow up with the controller to follow up with you directly and immediately after this? I'm sorry, you're muted now.
I'll follow, but that's not what I asked for. It's not. I'm asking for the commitment. We can sit down and talk about the LDA, but I want to know where that, not the way it was described. LDA is the commitment that other community CDCs have out throughout the city on city-owned property. I think that's real simple, asking for that LDA. If they city-owned property, we identify them. All I'm asking controllers to sit down with those 2 organizations and work out an LDA with them. That's all I'm asking.
Councilman, I am happy to commit to sitting down with you and with these organizations to talk. I am not able to commit to definitely doing an LDA, but let's see where the talk goes.
I would like to be a part of that conversation as well. Like,
Thank you, Mr. Glover. It's noted.
Councilman Glover, I'm happy to meet with you either with Councilman Stokes or separately, however the two of you would like to handle the conversation or conversation.
Hey, I'm going to jump in here real quick. I just want to make sure we close the loop on this and all the council members' concerns are addressed. Councilman Stokes, can we go back to you for a second?
Yes, sir.
Comptroller Henry, can you commit to having an initial conversation with Councilman Stokes before the end of the day tomorrow? Just an initial conversation so that we can before the end of the day tomorrow, just so we can get have a more detailed dialogue that's probably not appropriate for I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole here. Councilman Glover, do you and Councilman Stokes want to do this meeting individually or together?
I'd rather do it together. Like, some of the things that he shared, like especially when it comes to EBDI, this is a part of like he and I districts together. So I would like to, we could jointly do this together, so I could have the same amount of information as Councilman Stokes.
Okay, Councilman Stokes, you're okay with that approach?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back over to Chairman Dorsey. We're going to move on to the next topic, next question. In the meantime, I'm going to go talk with Casey offline. I'm going to get the comptroller's availability, and then Councilman Glover and Stokes, I'm going to circle back with you, and we'll get that meeting scheduled before the end of the day tomorrow, so we can go from there and get moving on what is clearly a very important issue to both you and your districts, and that we Comptroller Henry, appreciate the making this a priority for your office, because this isn't something that's important to two colleagues, is really important to the entire council. So I'm going to go work on that, and I'll circle back in a few minutes. And Chairman Dorsey, back to you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Councilman Ramos and then Porter, and then we're going to go to Councilman Schleifer. I believe the Council Vice President has joined us, Madam Vice President. Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Comptroller, for your time. I'm very involved in the tax sale issue, both on the vacant property side as well as the homeowner side. So when you said earlier that there are times when the Comptroller's office gets a property if it's not sold in tax sale, is that what I heard you say? So that's on the vacant property side?
That's a good point. I guess it wouldn't have to be. It probably is, but Andy,
I guess I just don't.
Do we have any technical certificates for occupied property?
Under an ordinance every year, about 6 months after the initial tax sale, the one that usually occurs in May, the unsold certificates, regardless of how they break down, are referred to our office for disposition. So we get about 1,400 properties referred to us each year from the main tax sale, and those are net properties that are taken out of the tax sale or properties that are put in what's called the bulk sale, which is something that is overseen by the housing department. And so then we have the ability to sell those tax sales at face value, or we have something called a vendor lien program, which allows us to negotiate a reduction in the lien amounts, significant reduction, so the property can be up right side, up financially, and sell a vacant property to someone at a lower lien amount in exchange for that person committing to renovate the property for homeownership or rental.
Okay, I understood. I didn't realize that the bulk sale process happens through you all and not through housing.
No, the bulk sale is through housing. Sorry if I wasn't clear about that.
Okay, So,
we get the ones after they don't sell at bulk sale either.
mhm,
Right.
mhm. And then you work, oh, so I guess we'll just have to have this. This is a very detailed in the weeds conversation about this process because we're going to be working on reforms of the process to make it easier for people to avoid tax sale, but also try to work on the vacant property side as well. So because there are properties that I know of where the certificate did not sell, somebody's still living in that property.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why their liens are so high. And so I guess nobody's reached out to that person to try to work things out. This is in many instances. So I want to try to figure out the comptroller's role in this piece after things are not sold. Then related to that, so anyway, I'll follow up with you on that. That's a very in the weeds conversation that we need to have. This issue of these vacant lots, these 7,000 vacant lots, right? There's not properties on them. These are lots, correct? So what was the purpose of the comptroller's office obtaining them through tax sale back in the day? And why haven't the comptroller's office tried to offload them?
Okay, let me back up and also say I'm not sure that the 7,000 number was just lots. I thought 7,000 was the total amount of properties that HCD has under its auspices.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I used the wrong
Yeah.
number. That's correct. It's not 7,000. Excuse me. You're right. Okay. The ones that you own, which was about 1,300, right?
We have 1,300 properties total. I think most of them are lots. Andy, do we have a breakdown?
We don't yet, but you're right. Most of them are lots.
Yeah.
And so we don't know. I know you haven't been there for very long, but you did say that you have many documents that you've gone through that are ancient that I was wondering, what's the, so there hasn't been any, do you plan on offloading them and trying to get them to be more productive?
The short answer to that is we already do that as sort of just part of what real estate does is like so far this year, I think we've sold $467,000 worth of tax sale certificates. We sold 20 in the month of May. So right now, but if what you're asking is there a concerted marketing effort to go out and try to get buyers for them? No, right now the real estate isn't staffed to do that. We're more when people are interested. As so many city agencies are, we're largely reactive to the demands of the market. If people want a property, they come to the city and find out that we're the one who has the tax sale certificate for it, and if they want it, they have to come buy the certificate from us.
So, yeah, but you just said that these are properties that the comptroller's office owns, not that are tax sale certificates. It's two different things.
I'm sorry, that's a fair, yes, I misspoke. So some of them are, we have actually redeemed the certificate.
Sure, you've foreclosed
And
them.
now they're owned by the mayor and city council.
Got it. Okay. Well, anyway, it would be interesting to see that map when it comes, and hopefully you can offload that. But related to the real estate office, there's a real estate office in BDC. There's a real estate office in housing. There's a real estate office in your office. Is there a reason to have?
Yes, that's a great question, Councilwoman, and I will refer you to the Charter of Baltimore City, which created an Office of Real Estate for the city, and that is the one which is supervised by the Comptroller. The real estate officer is, according to the charter, the real estate officer for the city. What has happened over the decades is mayors who did not get along well with the Comptroller have created by ordinance entities such as the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is not in the charter. And they have, through their power of the budget, staffed those offices so that those offices can do things solely under the control of the mayor and not have to go through the additional watchdog step of having an office of real estate which reports to a different elected official be involved in the mechanics of whether or not that property changes. And so I acknowledge that there are multiple agencies now all doing stuff involving real estate. And two, I will give the current administration credit. The current administration has shown a willingness to sit down and try to find a way to coordinate all of this in a way that makes more sense. Because in the past, it has been anywhere from confrontational to other agencies just trying to do real estate work and ignore the existence of the actual city office of real estate. And I don't think that's best for the city in any way, shape, or form. I am going to be happy to go on record saying this is an area where I think central coordination serves the city well. And so I think having the Office of Real Estate work closely with the other agencies that need to interact with city-owned real estate makes a lot of sense. Whether we're at the point yet where the administration is going to say, that's a good point, we can just take all of the other acquisition and disposition and real estate management services that are being performed in half a dozen other agencies around the city and just turn them over to the Office of Real Estate. That's unlikely. But I'll give you an example. The Office of Real Estate, prior to our administration coming on board, struggled for the better part of a year trying to get permission from HR and to a small extent budget, but I think the big hangup was HR over hiring an in-house appraiser that could be done at a salary where real estate could actually attract a good professional appraiser. And what we're trying to get a handle on right now is, as far as we can tell, there are other agencies that are contracting out for appraisal services. And why would they be contracting out for appraisal services if there's an in-house appraiser? And the answer is because we have this culture of fiefdoms in Baltimore City where each of the agencies feels like they report to the mayor and nobody else. And we need to have guidance coming from the top requiring the agencies to work in a collaborative fashion. And we're hoping over the course of the next few months to demonstrate that we can be a central city office of real estate that provides needed services to other agencies for whom real estate is not their primary mission. And I probably already said too much, but that's my brief answer to your question.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you,
I think
Mr. Chair.
Andy wanted to add to it.
Can we're gonna start running out of time here. We have a couple of other members we haven't heard from yet. I'd like to go to Councilwoman Porter and then Councilman Schleifer.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I'll keep my questions very brief. The first question for the Comptroller is, can you talk through, so most of the processes that you're talking about are at least 1 to 2 years for implementation with regard to any type of like full citywide implementation. Can you talk through some of the short-term strategies that your office is implementing, particularly with like real estate transactions, something to really keep the ship going while we figure out how to make how we modernize the comptroller's office as well as city government.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman, could you be more specific in terms of, are you talking about the modernization efforts or are you talking about the real estate issues?
So I'm talking about both. So most of the processes that you had mentioned during your presentation, you're talking about going from point A to point B, and from my guesstimate, just knowing processes, implementations, that's at least a 1 to 2 year, 1 to 2 year kind of execution citywide of those processes. Can you speak to some of the short-term strategies that your office is working through to kind of mitigate some of the issues that we are seeing, that your office is seeing amongst like the larger processes? I'm getting towards a process question here.
Okay, I think the way I can describe that is, so I think what I was tripping over the 1 to 2 year part, because I am very hopeful that we can do at least the next phase of modernization of the BOE process inside a year. And the next phase being getting to the point where we are storing the records electronically in a searchable fashion. What might take more than a year is full-on digitization of the process. The goal is to get the creation of. Let me back that up. We want to get to the point where an agency puts a request onto the Board of Estimates agenda, much the same way that right now any city employee who's able to request stuff from CityBuy orders something from CityBuy. You're going to have each agency would have identified personnel, the ones who are allowed to make requests of the board. They would have a web form on their desktop. They would fill out the web form by putting in summaries of the work or the request, attaching scanned in copies of any particular documents that need to be part of the backup. And then that web form would populate the database. And every week it would just spit out a report of all of the requests that have made it through the pre-board approval process to get onto the board's agenda. Some items have to go to audits before they come to the board. Many have to go to the law department for performance efficiency. Some items have to go to the expenditure control committee. Some leases go to the space allocation committee. And after they get approved at those intermediate steps, they come onto the board's agenda. That workflow should all be virtual. And when it gets to when it gets to the controller's office, the only work that controller staff should need to do on a weekly or maybe even bi-weekly agenda basis would be actually having a human being read the summary and read the backup information to make sure that the summary is a fair, synopsis of what the board is actually being asked to approve. And then the best part of having that information in a database is not just the fact that each week's agenda gets generated automatically. The best part is to make sure that anybody who wants to can search that database for information. It would be, we'd have a portal outward facing. That part, yes. To get all of that done might take a year to 2 years. But in the shorter term, I think we can get some type of database solution where we are already, like one of the things we did a couple months ago is we switched over from requiring hard copies to letting agencies submit requests electronically. They now can email their board memos and supporting documents over to us. But we're still just essentially, cutting and pasting that into the board agenda. There's still no storage of that information in a way that's searchable. That's the next phase. And I really think that next phase can be done in that first year. So I think that would count as one of the short-term things.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'll follow up with you, particularly on also just the nimbleness and coordinating capabilities of your office, because I think your office, kind of being internal and external, is able to coordinate much, a lot more farther along with other like citywide agencies. So I'll defer my additional questions and I'll return it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
And I'll be happy to catch up with you offline to continue.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Schleifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Comptroller, thanks for being with us today.
Councilman, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Just two quick questions for you. The first one, you were talking about that system that you're looking to put information online. I think that's a great idea. Just one logistical question. Will that system have the ability for people to set alerts and to track certain things? Like, will there be the opportunity to, like a council person to be able to sign up that when something's listed there as a council district, falls into their council district, that they're notified about something? Or if you wanted to follow a specific contract that, let's say a member of the media wanted to follow something, that they could set an alert and it sends them, updates as things are added to that folder?
I will be candid, we hadn't thought to design it that way on purpose. That was something that I know we would have the internal capability to do, and for what it's worth, we've already added an internal policy of we try to identify items by council district now, and we've been encouraging agencies to identify those things by council districts, because we would like to get to the point where when we send out Board of Estimates agenda information every week, we can add a particular message to individual council people and say, by the way, pages 2, 3, 7 on this week's agenda involve items in your district. So we know we wanted to do that internally. We hadn't thought about trying to make that a function of the system, like letting people set up Google alerts. I'm happy to look into it.
Sure, yes. I mean, the council president's office has been doing that for us manually, but I think if you can get that set in there, you'd probably save Mr. Stegman a few hours of his week.
Well, I mean, sure, but at the end of the day, do we really want to deprive Mr. Stegman of that kind of contact with other human beings? I mean, it's not like Legistar right now lets you set alerts so that when, a bill that you're interested in gets introduced or gets a hearing announced, it tells you. You just got to actually check the agenda every week. So, I'm saying I'm happy to look at it, and maybe we can work with the council president's office and perform a similar upgrade for Legistar at the same time.
Sure. Well, you're going from upgrading it from the 1970s to 2020, so I figure you should at least be ahead of Legistar. And my second question.
Can I just note real quick, Councilman Schleifer, this is a function that the state system has, that you can track a bill in the state legislative process. It would be great to see, as you pointed out, to see that happen with Legistar, but definitely agree with Councilman Schleifer here. This would be great to have happen with contracts. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Comptroller, as you know, the council rule that if me and Councilman Dorsey agree on something, that it's something that needs to be implemented. On to my next.
I believe it also involves Councilman Costello making a trifecta.
Well, I don't know about him, but my next question is regarding, I guess, a request Would it be possible, because you were talking about some of the history and some of the sales of properties and everything like that, could you send either myself or the committee a list maybe of the past 5 years of sale of city-owned buildings? You know, when they were sold, how much they were sold for, and how much they were sold, and who they were sold to. I'm not talking about like row homes and like vacant lots. I'm talking about buildings.
Okay, so the easiest answer to that, sir, is yes. I'm sure we can do that. I might need to reach back to you or ask Andy to reach out to you to make sure that we're looking at the right parameters for the kinds of buildings you're interested in. But we would be happy to work with you on that offline.
Okay, great. It's just anything that's not like a vacant lot or a house. So anything that's a building.
Okay.
So
Real quick, Councilman Glover and Councilman Stokes, your meeting is set up for tomorrow with the Comptroller at 4:30 p.m. at City Hall. Thank you all for making yourselves available on such short notice, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair, Madam Vice President, do you have any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Colleagues, any other questions? Let's see. I still see some hands raised, but I'm not sure if they were just left up from before. I'll go back to the order I went before. Councilman Burnett?
I'm good. I actually just do a comment in the chat and misspelled a word, but basically when you when you go in the states, I would just want to flag that the state also allows you to watch bill hearings when you click on the bill itself. So if you want to, you know, it's all in sort of one space. And I think that could be helpful for both Board of Estimates and council hearings. I definitely love the yeoman's job that Charm TV does to get everything up on YouTube in a timely manner, and I'm thankful for that. But it would be great that if you could integrate both whether it's BOE or legislation, when you click on it, you can watch the bill hearing and see what happened. Because right now you have to kind of remember what day it was and then scroll through YouTube to be able to get to the hearing. So if we could just add that to the Christmas list, that'd be great.
I think that sounds great, Councilman. We should follow up with Nashwana Austin about that. She maintains Legistar for these the bill records for the council, and usually it takes often much of the evening of a hearing for a video to upload to YouTube, and I think she's pretty commonly updating Legistar the following day anyway, so that'd give her a good time frame to find the, you know, perhaps for Charm TV to send her the link so she doesn't have to go looking for it and then get it added into Legistar. Let's follow up with her on that. Councilman Stokes, your hand is up. Councilman Schleifer, your hand is up.
I already asked my questions, thank you.
Councilman Glover.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. This for the controllers. In an effort to decrease spending, has the controller's office considered like remote work options to limit what we are spending in leased properties for city agencies?
The short answer to that is no, because we don't tell agencies what they can and cannot do in terms of leasing properties. We're more like the real estate agent. If they want to rent a certain space, then we help work with them and whoever provides the space. The people making the decision on saving money by leasing less space and having more employees telework or telecommute, that would be a conversation between the agency and BDMR. But Yeah, we don't control whether agencies can be in a space or not. We more facilitate it.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that for me. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank
Chairman
you, Mr. Chair.
Costello? Yes. Chairman Costello, you have any questions before we wrap it up? I think that we've gone through everybody. I don't see Councilman Ramos' hand up, so I assume she's going to take questions.
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're now, and colleagues, any other questions? All right, we are now in recess till 3:30 sharp. Thank you. Mr. Comptroller, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.